Dangerous experiments in which we encounter some people who actually test their theories. I was misinformed, from Casablanca. I want to show you something, from Indecent Proposal. For 9 months in 1838, a Mr. Samuel Rowbotham conducted extensive experiments at a canal called the Old Bedford Level in Cambridgeshire, England. This canal contains an uninterrupted length of 6 miles between the Welney and the Old Bedford bridges. Like every other experimenter, Mr. Rowbotham had a theory in mind and wanted to test it, and, of course, to vindicate it. But you know that, if you've read volumes 1 and 2 of this Encyclopedia of Blasphemy, the disinterested observer, the Lemuel Gulliver objectivist, exists only in fiction. In the real world, experimenters always want to prove some darling theory they have made an idol, so that all may join them in bowing down to worship it. Mr. Rowbotham's pet theory derived from Holy Scripture and held that, as Moses wrote, our planet consists of a flat circle, like a coin. It does not have a spherical or globular shape at all. He calculated, correctly I think, that over the 6 miles between the 2 bridges, the curvature of the earth should make objects on the one bridge seem several feet lower than on the other, a difference that should appear quite visible to a telescope if modern notions had validity. And, of course, no height difference would appear between objects on the 2 bridges if Moses got the straight scoop from Papa Tetragrammaton himself. Well, for 9 months Rowbotham measured and measured, standing on Welney Bridge and looking through a telescope at various markers on Old Bedford Bridge. Like most other experimenters, he found only and always what he looked for. Not once did he see any displacement caused by curvature. After the traditional 9-month gestation, Rowbotham brought forth the child of his labors. His experiments, he announced, demonstrated conclusively that no curvature existed. He reiterated this many times, traveling about England and lecturing everywhere on the triumph of the Bible over heathen geologists. He even repeated the experiments with audiences of various sizes. They all thought they saw what Rowbotham thought he saw. He further popularized his experiments and theories in a book called Zetetic Astronomy and formed a Zetetic Society. By 1870, the Zetetics had made enough converts that one of them, Mr. John Hampden, offered a reward of £500, a large sum then, to any defender of geology who could duplicate Rowbotham's experiments and demonstrate curvature. Alfred Russel Wallace, co-creator with Darwin of the natural selection model of evolution, accepted the challenge, and the tests occurred on 28 September 1870, to the everlasting bedevilment of all parties involved. Briefly, the globalists, led by Wallace, measured curvature, and the Zetetics, led by a flat-earther named William Carpenter, measured flatness. The referee, an editor named Walsh, ruled that the globalists had won and awarded the prize to Mr. Wallace. The Rowbothamites cried foul and insisted that Wallace had cheated. They sued, and the matter went to court. The 3 judges who heard the suit refused to pass judgment on the scientific evidence, which they held to lie outside the domain of statute law. They ruled only that wagers do not have the legal force of contracts, and that, since Mr. Carpenter and Mr. Hampton did not accept Mr. Wallace's measurements, they could have Hampton's money back. This did not soothe Carpenter's wrath. Still convinced that Wallace had rigged his experiments, Carpenter grew more embittered as time passed and developed a paranoid suspiciousness about all experts, especially alleged experts in geology. He embarked on a campaign for justice, as he saw it, which took the form of 16 years of ruthless persecution of Wallace, including vile letters to Wallace's wife and children, and slanderous accusations of Wallace's total perfidy delivered ad lib to anyone who would listen to him. Wallace finally sued for relief, and Carpenter spent a year in prison. As soon as he got out, his campaign of harassment and vilification resumed. We haven't seen anything like this missionary zeal until James Randi's hellfire and brimstone crusade against Uri Geller. I don't suppose it helped Wallace's peace of mind much that, although he and Darwin each invented evolution by natural selection at the same time, Darwin got all the credit in most textbooks, and Wallace, at best, got acknowledged in footnotes. If they had ever crowned the poor man king, I think he'd have the title Alfred the Unlucky in history books. Anyway, Wallace, almost bankrupted by legal expenses and driven to nervous exhaustion, became a spiritualist. Carpenter eventually migrated to America, where he continued to preach Moses, special creation, and a flat-as-a-pancake earth. In 1901, an orthodox scientist named Oldham repeated the old Bedford Canal experiments. He reported his results in a paper for the British Association for the Advancement of Science. He, of course, had measured curvature, as an orthodox scientist should. In 1905, Lady Elizabeth Blunt, then the head of the Zetetic Society, financed further experiments at the Old Bedford Canal, involving a photographer named Clifton, who recorded the results for posterity. They measured no curvature, i.e., straight-line flatness. You didn't really think they would measure curvature, did you? In the midst of all this Old Bedford malice in Wonderland, our old friend Koresh, the one whose goddess told him we lived inside the hollow earth, and that whites and blacks in America should stand shoulder to shoulder as equal brothers to keep out the heathen Chinese, that Koresh, not the Waco Wacko, conducted his own experiments in Florida. A disciple named Morrow had invented a device called the Rectilineator, which allegedly would measure curvature or departure from flatness more accurately than the telescopes and cameras at the Bedford bridges. Morrow and Koresh used a 2-mile section of the Florida coast and performed over a month of measurements testing for flatness, Bible theory, convexity, globular theory, or concavity, Koreshanity theory. You guessed it, they measured concavity. The Earth curved upward a little more than 10 feet over the 2 miles measured, just as it should if we live inside an 8,000-mile diameter bubble within solid rock. None of these results astound me too much. I once measured the acceleration of a falling body, a marble actually, at 68 feet per second, even though every physics book insists that falling bodies fall at 32 feet per second. I may have witnessed a genuine fluctuation in Earth's gravity field, or I may have needed a new pair of glasses and not realized it yet. Or, even more likely, the apparatus that released the marble may have malfunctioned. I don't know, but I incline toward the theories that the apparatus malfunctioned, or my eyes read the clock wrong. I doubt I had the good luck to witness a sudden anti-gravity wave. But in considering the above experiments, I feel we must accept some sort of postmodernism, or at least some of the neurological relativism I preach in all my books. The instrument that measures all other instruments, the human nervous system, has its own laws, and one of them involves always seeing the results one wants to see until and unless something really startles the brain enough to reframe its experiences.